Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, CSM Mistakes Were Made. I cranked some socks for my husband out of some sport weight yarn that is 6-ply sock yarn. And I do these socks as a labor of love because I love my husband, but I don't like making socks out of this yarn. There are a lot of challenges, and I think I captured a lot of them on the upcoming video. So let's just talk a little bit about, first of all, this yarn. It is a sport weight yarn, which is a little heavier, not quite as heavy as DK, but heavier, of course, than fingering weight. And it poses a lot of challenges for our circular sock machines. I'm lucky that my old Ligare 400 will crank it, although it does complain a little bit. So the other challenge is that each sock that I crank my husband needs 1.5, a little over 1.5 50-gram skeins. So I'm doing a lot of faux Russian joins with this yarn. So you'll see how I do that in the video. There is a pattern. I did link to the file that I placed in Circular Sock Machine Facebook page 2.0, and it's in the files section there, and I'll try to link it directly. So I think you might be able to download a PDF of this. All right. I also want to mention that, well, let me show you what we're dealing with here with my husband. He loves these socks. These have been washed, not dried in the dryer, but washed several times, and very hard on socks. I leftover vegetation from his volunteer work embedded in the yarns, and they end up getting a little felted and a little small. So I've accepted that about him. He's not going to treat these as heirlooms. He's going to use these, and I just keep making them. And this is the newest one that I made that you'll see in the video. I haven't grafted the toe yet. So I wanted to point out a couple of interesting things. We made a mistake in the video. One of them is a glaring mistake that you'll see before I see it, and it's kind of fun. I deal with it, and it gets fixed. Another is that the mistake I made that nearly caused me to think about frogging this sock was that I like to use the heel spring for the entire foot because I think it cinches it up a little bit. And what happened was that I had to do a join of another ball of yarn right about here. You can actually see that. And I think we can all relate to forgetting to re-engage the heel spring when you add a new color or a new ball of yarn or make any kind of swap. And that's what I did. So the area between here and here is a bit bulkier looking because of the lack of heel spring engagement. And I'm a nerd, so I actually went to the effort of measuring the gauge difference. So the stitch gauge I have to refer to my notes, the stitch gauge was, that would be, an inch of stitches. Here was 7 stitches, which is actually, very few because of its bulk. And then in the region where I did re-engage the heel spring, it's 7.5. So not that significant, but half a stitch. But the row gauge was different too. The row gauge, of course, is an inch of stitches in this direction, was 9 stitches in here and 10 stitches in the tighter weave. And I have to laugh at myself because I really thought, I should probably frog this sock. It's not anywhere close to perfect. And then I come to the realization that these socks are put through their paces with my husband, and I don't think he's going to care that the row gauge is a little off and the stitch gauge is a little off on this sock. So that's all I wanted to say before we get into the video on how I make heavy ribbed boot socks. Enjoy. Thank you. All right, so I've cast on with waste yarn, and then I've got a row of ravel cord, and I'll start my yarn in the yarn tupper. Three-quarters of a way around. Grab some ribbing needles and starting at the slot right after needle number 1. Okay. All right, we're almost done adding the ribbon needles in. Don't need my counter yet, don't need my heel spring. I'm going to crank around till this point points at the last ribbon needle. 2 out rows, and then now we got to do 25 rows of, or excuse me, 20 rows of 1 by 1 ribbon. Rows. Swap out to make it so that I've got 3 by 1 ribbing. For the leg. I'll come back when I get all the way around. All right, I've just put my last cylinder needle in, and I will release the cylinder spring. This maneuver of swapping out cylinder needles for ribbon needles is where I tend to drop stitches. And I told myself that I would try to be extremely careful and make sure that the cylinder needle I put in is raised up a little bit and the latch is open. So we'll see. I've already reset my counter, so I've started row 1. And we're off. I'm stopping at row 70, but I'm stopping a little earlier than 6 o'clock. Right after my counter got to 70, I stopped. This is roughly 12 o'clock. And this gives me plenty of space to remove these front needles. I should say not remove, but swap these front ribbon needles to get a pre-heel that has stockinette on the back and maintains the pattern of 3 by 1 on the top of the foot. Most people know that it's important to swap the obvious ones, which are in the back of the foot and the Achilles region, and then these will be the sole of the foot. But it's also important to swap out any ribbon needle that's close to the edge of where the heel will be. And I intend to do that. I'll show you what I mean. This is a no-brainer because it's well on the south side of the halfway mark. This one is just on the south side of the little red mark. But there's one over here that you can't see that is just, well, maybe you can see it. I have a red mark here, and the needle, I replaced it. So it's been suggested that you remove any ribbon needle that's within 2 stitches of where the heel will be. So that's what I've done. All right, now I'm going to put these needles in the cylinder. I have to say that this newish pick tool hasn't worked as well as I wanted it to, but it was a bare metal pick tool, and I put some Sculpey on it so I could hold it better. But yeah, I'm not loving the tool itself yet. Maybe I will. I have two Addy pick tools, and I like to have two. Normally, one I keep on the floor, if you know what I mean, and then the other one is available when I can't find the first one. But one of my Addy pick tools is magnetized. I have such a problem with magnetization. I shock things all around this house in the dryness of the winter. Now that we're coming into spring, maybe it won't be so bad. I'm going to put the stem weight up a little higher, and then I'm going to crank 10 rows. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and instead of stopping at 12, I'll be stopping at the normal spot, which is 6, 10. Now, I'm at a point where I have to decide if I'm going to build my heel with the ribber assembly on. I think I will. When I drop stitches, which with this particular yarn I tend to do, it's important to take the ribber off just so you can fix those stitches, and then it also helps you see the heel a little bit better. But I think I'll take a chance. I can tell when I feel underneath. I don't feel any holes yet, so let's take a chance. To knit a heel with your ribber assembly on, but sort of out of work, means to take out this elbow-shaped pin. So the ribber arm won't create ribbing stitches. So this will stay here. Now I have to lift the needles in the back of the machine. And I'm just kind of worn into a groove now where I make a +2 deep heel. So here's my halfway point, and these are the 2 stitches I'm going to keep in work, and I've got 2 over here, same thing, keep those in work. Then I'll crank the heel. I'll put my heel spring on, and that isn't going to move around. It's just going to stay here. And the big downside of doing it this way is you can't really see what you're doing. But the upside is that it's faster because you don't have to park these needles and take everything off and then put it back on. So it stays. These ribber needles stay put with stitches on them, and they'll be put back into work after I do the heel. So I don't need a counter. I've got my heel spring on. Let's give this a whirl here. Okay. I've made an error. It's not a terrible one, but maybe I can show you. I will try to, let's see if that works. Kind of an awkward view, but I lifted all these needles, but I neglected to lift these 2. So they actually knitted. They did their job. And I caught it on the first pass, which means I got lucky. And all I have to do is tink them. So to tink, we're going to take the yarn out of the out of the yarn carrier. So let's just do it this way. We'll lift that old stitch back on. The old stitch is sitting there right in the back of the needle, so we'll lift the old stitch back on, and we're good. I got lucky. And now, of course, I need to lift those. And I will say that we are going to be back in business here. I will put this yarn back in. And let's see how that works. So one pass on this side, and I raised the needle. One pass on this side, and now I raised that needle. The yarn is attached to the needle that was just taken out of work. Okay. Raise the needle. And then crank a row. Raise a needle. Crank a row. Now I find doing heels this way has benefits, as I mentioned, and disadvantages. And one of the other disadvantages is that now when I have to start thinking about adding my heel forks, you can't see. You're sort of doing it blind. So I'm going to try to place them where they can grip, by feel. And that one went in okay. And let's see if I can get this one in. That one went in okay. And that one went in okay. So we have now got to raise this one and come back around. Raise this one and come back around, and I'm pulling everything down with my hands. This is such hard yarn to knit with. It's very thick, and I need a lot of weight on it. So not only my 3 stem weights, but the pulling down motion where I grab onto everything with my hands. All right, we're doing pretty well. I'm going to raise the central weight up a little bit and raise the side weights a little bit. And I'm going to take into account that my 50-gram skein will run out. Likely, well, possibly before I finish the heel, although I'm optimistic I might be able to get through the heel anyway. I'd like to do that. So I've raised the needle over here. I'm getting it done. I was at a crank-in recently where one of the there was a contest between several of the very, very experienced crankers were challenged to, I think it was make a toe or a heel blindfolded. And I don't know if it was, I didn't watch really closely, but I don't know if it was the fastest person to do it blindfolded or the successful person, but wouldn't even dream of entering a contest like that. I need every one of my senses, I guess with the exception of smell. That's one sense I'm probably okay without. So I've erased the last 2 together on this side before my target needles, and I'll do the same on the left. It gives me a little bit of a rounded row junction, basically. And it looks nice, I think. Okay, got that one. it might be a good time to kind of redo these. So the one I'm working on now is the far left one, and it was hard to get out. So I don't love doing it this way, but I think I got it. Okay, so I've lowered 2 together on the right. Here's the 2 together on the left. And I don't think this one knit. In fact, I know it didn't, and I think it dropped off a stitch. I'm going to carefully remove the weight. Now, I'm going to try to see if I can zoom in to this area right here. And if you can see what I'm doing. All right, I believe when I lowered these 2 together, that they both should have knit. This strand should have knitted. It did knit on this one, but it didn't knit on this one. And furthermore, it looks like the stitch dropped off. So if I'm lucky, I'll be able to grab that guy. And I was able to grab it. That's the old stitch that should have knitted, or that dropped off, I should say, that dropped off. This is the strand that knit fine on the first of the 2, but didn't knit on the second one. So I'm going to grab that old stitch. That was the one I just dug out from. I was so lucky that it didn't drop into the cylinder. Knit that over. It's perched a little bit, but I think I can pull it down. And when I put this back on, it should pull down more, which it did. Okay, so I was very lucky on that. We're doing our increases after having done all these decreases. Now we're widening back out one by one. And I'll be honest, I can't wait till this heel is done. So where were we? We lowered these 2 together. That one not only didn't knit, but the stitch fell off. So on an edge stitch, you should thank your lucky stars when you can find that stitch in the first place to put back on the needle. So I am so grateful that I was able to do that. So, and then we knitted the one that didn't knit. So I'm very glad. I'm going to lower this. And that worked well. Get this one going. Okay. One of my weights just fell off. Yeah, I think this is one of the big disadvantages for me. One sign that your weight is about to fall off when you can see it is that it's hanging by one of these tines, and I can't tell. So an unstable heel weight, at least for me, is very hard to detect. So let's keep going, and I am holding my breath a little bit on this, so I call it white knuckle cranking. Yeah, it's hard to see spacing. So for a variety of reasons, this is, for me anyway, a challenge. And not my favorite way of doing heels. Okay. I think experienced crankers just know to keep their eyes on so many things at one time. And there's even signs of things that are about to go awry that may not even really be, that you're conscious of. You're just, it's kind of your nature to look and just keep tabs on everything. And I think that's what I'm doing now, is I'm keeping an eye on all of the different things that I can imagine can go wrong. And I'm learning new ones all the time. All right, one thing that I'm keeping my eye on, again, is that this is starting to get really thin. Now, I kept 2 more needles north of the halfway mark in work. Nope, yes, in work. And now I'm gradually increasing back out, but I will not be putting the second of 2 back in work until I start the foot itself. So I'm only doing 1 of each of those. Okay, so this one doesn't get put back into work quite yet, and this one doesn't either. It's hanging out with the top of the foot needles. So it will be put back into work, but not quite yet. All right, so I think we've done it. I think we've made a good heel. Now we get this, stick it in here, because now we want this thing to be pushed around the top of the rubber dial. We'll put these back into work. It feels good to have the last thing done before you can start your foot. Now, what still doesn't feel great to me is I still need weight on the pocket of this heel. I still need good weight, yet I cannot see where my little heel forks are hanging out. I think that's good, but I'm going to need weight until I get far enough down where I can put my central weight stack buckle above that pocket. All right, so far so good. I am at 0. I will crank 65 rows. And I want to leave the heel spring on to tighten up the fabric. All right, we should do one last check of these. And we are cleared for takeoff for the foot. There we go. Now, so I have to swap out the yarn. I have to put another partial cone on, and I doubt this will be enough. Let's see if I can wide angle this a little bit. No. All right, well, you'll see how I take this all the way around, back feed into, yeah, so I'm going to back feed it, keeping a loop, and it's going to be a healthy size loop. I think I need to turn over a new leaf and actually give myself the best chance of success by not being stingy when I make these faux Russian joins. All right, so I cranked it in. This is locked here. And this little tail, it's not going to bother anybody. But I think what I might do is take this long hook tool that I hardly ever use anymore, but I might try to get it. Okay, so I'm going to try to get this to pull down into the sock, into the what is the cylinder of the sock, the inside, so it won't get reknit, and I'll be able to snip it off. All right, so that little tail didn't bother anybody, but I took care of it. Now I'm going to put the next bit of yarn in, and it's probably not going to be enough for an entire foot, but I loop this through. It doesn't matter if you go that way or this way. All right, so just kind of grab that. Doesn't matter. This will all be doubled up. Got to kind of keep a hold of this because there's nothing really holding it except you. All right, so I'm going to crank forward. And it gets very tough because, first of all, this is very thick yarn to begin with, and then when you double it up, it's really thick. All right, we're at row 10 of the foot. Sometimes when there is a join, there can be a hopped stitch, but I think it's good. I think it's good. All right, so we're at row 10. I believe this is not going to be nearly enough for the rest of the sock, but let's just keep going. Okay, I've reached the end like we anticipated. This is not enough. It sure goes by fast. This yarn is so thick. So we're at row 50. I have to do 15 more and the toe. All right. I hope I had the heel spring on that whole time. Oh, man. All right. So let's try to get this in here. I did not leave myself a very big tail at all. And furthermore, I'm really worried that I didn't put the heel spring back on, but let's see. I might end up... yes, I don't think I did. I think this is going to be not the right... I think I might have to frog this sock, but let's just finish it and then we'll see. Okay, so what I was worried about before, and it's easy to forget, when you want the heel spring on but you have other operations to do before you do it, you worry about those first, and then the heel spring becomes sort of an afterthought. So we'll do it now, but I'm not sure. All right, 52. $65. Now, the part that is kind of fun is to take all of the rubber needles out now to get to an all stockinette couple of rows. I usually do just one row of all stockinette before I crank a toe, but my notes say to do two for some reason. But anyway, we'll do two. But the big reason is so that you can graft all knit stitches when you are doing Kitchener. We'll take this guy. Well, no, I guess I better put the needles in. I think I probably could take my ribber off, but I better put these in first. So here we go. We got two more to do. Put that back in. Lifting it off. Oh, I forgot to put that in. So this needle didn't get put in that slot. It's so easy to forget about one over here because the darn ribber arm gets in the way. So I did it again, but no harm, no foul. Get that in. Okay, so we're going to do 2 rows. We are going to have a look, and as I was concerned about not using the heel spring when I wanted to, I believe this section had no heel spring on, and I put it back on here when I added that last skein. Okay, one other thing to think about. Would my husband notice? No. I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to keep going. Most of the socks I make for him are flawed in some way, so these are no exception. He's very hard on these socks. He's very hard on them. And yesterday he came home after volunteering, and he had punctured his leg and bled into my wool sock that I made him. And of course my first concern was him, but then not too far second was, will the sock be okay? But we got him all cleaned up, Band-Aid and every bandage and everything, and then the sock, good old cold water soak, and it got that blood out. Anyway, it's all to say these socks have a hard life. 2 rows of stockinette. Now, I think I will be doing a toe now. Let's see if I can. All right, lifting all of the needles. Don't need my counter. Do need my heel spring. Crank a row, lift a needle. Lifting needles and lowering needles on the yarn carrier side. It's hard to get, it was hard for me anyway to keep in mind that what we're doing is decreasing first. We're decreasing down. And now we need to add heel forks. So much easier to see where you're poking these through, I think, than when you have to do a heel with the ribber assembly on, but that's okay. We did it. We got it done. Because the row gauge, not only the stitch gauge, but the row gauge is so altered by the thickness of the yarn, I find I have to move the heel forks up more frequently. Lifting these two together. Lifting these two together. Lowering these two together. Lowering these two together. Most people know this method of lowering the needles just halfway is a very fast way to crank the increases. But I don't think everybody has a stomach for it. It's called suicide heel because of a couple of things. Because it feels like you're really taking a chance when you're just letting the latch do the work. And it's Sue Vanesky has got the name, or somebody named it after her, suicide. It was kind of a cute play on words. But if you don't like taking a chance and watching that latch and trying to make sure that it does its job, it's really easy to just wrap it. Well, it's not easy for me anymore because I don't have the muscle memory, but you can, see, you can easily just put the yarn behind the needle and lower it. So lower it, put the yarn behind the needle, and that it does the same exact thing. And I think it's a little more fiddly to do it this way, but it gets you the same exact place. Those stitches are identical whether you do it like that or like that. Okay, we're coming up to the last two. By now, most people know that you lower these together for the sole purpose of cranking one second to last row. The last row that we put in, this sock, will be a Kitchener row. And we will start it over here on this side of the sock. And you will see now how I crank off. All right, so here we go. If I left it like that, that would be a problem. Let's see if I can focus. If I leave it like that, that would be a problem. I need to put it so that that needle knits. What would be the problem if I didn't fix that right now? Of course, that would have dropped off. Is it a do-over kind of sock when that happens? No. You can usually dig out the stitch and put it back on, but it's a hassle, so we avoid it when we can. All right, I have dropped a stitch there. I didn't know. Let's fix that stitch. Okay. I think most people are well aware of how to fix a drop stitch, but it's a cylinder stitch. You can grab a tool like this. I like these. It's more comfortable, especially when you have several rows. It's always probably a good idea to take the weight off just so it doesn't run any further. So when I grab the live loop, it's right there. I grab it from underneath, and I sometimes just say, you know what, I'm not going to try to mess around and get a loop that's really easy. I'm going to make it harder on myself and go for one that's lower and more of a sure thing. And the other sure thing is if you do that, you have more stitches to fix. So now you saw that. Okay, so you get it going. And this is 6-ply yarn, so what I think I'll do is use a pick tool to kind of help me get the right loop on in the hook of latch hook tool. Go back through, make sure the old stitch is well under the latch. Put the new stitch in the hook of the latch hook tool, and then sometimes you get lucky and you don't need, you can just kind of position everything so it's going to knit easily. But you know what I think? I think I may have flubbed this up again, but let's see. Okay, so I'm going to put that underneath there. I'm going to get that there. And there's a tiny little bit of yarn that I didn't catch on one of the loops, but I am not going to worry about that. I think I'll point it out. And if my husband gives me grief about it, I'll have him checked. All right, so there's that little loop. So I didn't catch all of it. That's okay. Now, I think we will just keep going. I got my weights off. I don't think I need to put them on for the last few rows. When the yarn drops off like this, it can get into big mischief. So when it drops off, just kind of keep track of it. And there we go. All right, let's see what we have here. Let's look. So this was the Juana's cast on with 2 out rows. That looks really good. Really good. No drop stitches. And look at all this oil on here. That's one of the first things I'm seeing, and it's no wonder because it's all over my hands. I got to do a really deep clean on this machine here real soon. So we have a lot of rows of 3x1, 3x1, 3x1. We did a 10-row pre-heel in here, and remember for that we swapped out all of these ribber needles for a very smooth fabric back in the Achilles tendon area. So we want the pre-heel to be a transition to a very nice smooth bottom of the foot, but we want to keep all of these on top of the foot. You don't have to. If you wanted to, you could say do all of the 3x1 and then swap all of the ribber needles out and just start stocking that for the rest of the sock, which is another good way to do things. Here's our heel. I can't remember if we ran into trouble on this. Yeah, we had a little snag there from the heel forks, but I'll be able to reach in and kind of pull that in, I think. Here's the rounded, well, that's not a very good presentation with that snag there, but the rounded heel and toe, for that matter, that we do by raising 2 together on each side and then lowering them together on each side. And there's no hole here because we lowered our needles except for the last ones that we had left in work. To avoid a hole, you just always put one less needle back in work on each side, and that's such a slick way to do it. And here's the toe. I don't think we had any problems there, but look, another little snag. Okay, and the holes that we get here are easy to fill in when we do Kitchener. So they are great landmarks for Kitchenering. That stitch there is going to be grafted to that one. So it's really nice, I think, to have that hole as a good landmark. Now, one last thing. I don't know if your eyes are taking you to the section of the sock we did without the heel spring. We did the heel with the heel spring. And I believe I did up until I had to do a yarn change because I ran out of yarn. And from this point to this point, I think it would be measurable difference in the stitch gauge and the row gauge by not using the heel spring in the middle of the foot. But I'm not going to sweat it. Not for a second. These socks are hard to knit for me. I don't look forward to doing them. My husband loves them, so I make them for him, but it's not a fun sock for me to knit. The little smudges we just saw, should come out in the wash. That's the oil, the lily white oil combined with the iron of the cast iron that's wearing away slowly over decades and frankly over a century. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this. I'll keep this sock. You know, I really was a little disappointed that I didn't remember the heel spring right here. That's a mistake I can live with. All right, thanks for watching.